Well, welcome to the Dream Labs. Dr. Contrast here. Hope everybody's well. Thank you so much for taking the time here. Those of you who might be tuning in here, just want to go back and step back just a moment here from where we were yesterday. Before we go any further with this thing, as I stated yesterday in our approach to the problem of architectural rapid sketches, concept sketches, just nice to kind of step back and do some real quick thumbnail studies on just some architectural systems, advanced design and so forth, or just looking at shape and form, and above all else, keeping them really lucid, very non-committal, but at the same time, just fun to go through and changing shape and form and developing perspective. I think the thing I really stressed too yesterday was a very important aspect of this operation as well, and that is everything you're going to see here today as of yesterday, and everything we do here, for example, everything I go through on my stream is really based on a real fundamental understanding, a little bit of an understanding of perspective. Once you put that into practice, these things become extremely manageable, very simple to work with. Yeah, sometimes very challenging, but at least you've got a footprint or a battle plan to work with, and perspective is really critical. So, hey, hi, Chip, how are you? Thank you for coming on board here. Just a real quick review as to where we were yesterday. Hope you're having a great day, and thank you for joining us, Chip. So these sketches we're going to see, this is a bit of a review here, just to go back to yesterday for a little bit to show you these really fast, very quick ballpoint pen sketches. And as we stated yesterday in the program, I think it's very critical, or it will be very nice to see, not nice, but I think very useful to go through a process where our first day, for example, like yesterday, we really sat down and began to develop some sketches. My workday is over, certainly going better now. Hey, that's great. Mine too, Chip, so it's good to have you on board. But I think the important thing from yesterday's stream was the fact we established a series of sketches. Then we go right back in and I think treat this as a series. And I think I'll start doing this more often with subject matter. For example, day one, conceptualize it. Day two, maybe some facelifts, some adjustments. And then phase three, third phase, we're going to do a nice finished piece of illustration work or some real tight sketches in terms of finishing up the exercise. So let's go back into this thing. Yesterday we started this page one, did a very fluid, very organic looking surface here, almost like a wandering ribbon. Then went from that into an elevation study with like an airport terminal of some sort or a station. I just started with an elevation, then we converted that into a perspective. And I made a comment yesterday about the fact that you can literally take an elevation and begin to move it into perspective by developing the ground plane first, then pulling it back and then developing a vanishing point somewhere out there in the horizon line, which really has been very, very helpful. So that was the first sketch we did. So let's put that aside right there. And the second one we did was, again, changing the footprint, coming above eye level a little bit. And this is my eye level here, so to speak. And then coming right back in and just began to develop a little a plaza of some sort of metroplex with a little bit of an eye level change, coming up a little bit further, looking down on the site itself. Large structure, a big plaza space, and 3 outbuildings, and some support elements around, like maybe green space, park space, or other areas of parking, and so forth. And then the third one we did to go back to a very simple overhead, again, looking down on the perspective, again, the drive lines, going to perspective right and then perspective left. So it's all being governed by that. Very interesting to put together. Another little form study there. So that was the second one we did. And let's get the last one down. And the third one was almost the same variation, where we actually went reverse it a little bit. There's my leading edge, for example, right here, and we drive the drive lines back and then to the left and create another form very quickly with ballpoint pen. Then the last one we did was almost a very sheer, almost geometric surface piece. For example, this was an elevation, and decided to cut some sections through it so we can see what the surfaces are doing and begin to analyze how to take it into another generation if we choose to go back into that step and make it functional and matter. Last one we did is a little overhead view, a little perspective study of what that building might look like with some conversions or changes made to it. So that was basically where we were. And again, really a lot of fun yesterday, just going back in and just generating very simple shapes, very fast sketches, looking at the potential of conceptualizing architectural space, which in my opinion is probably one of the most unique disciplines because it's so innovative in terms of materials and technology, shape and function, manufacturing and so forth. Really interesting things going on in the architectural world, as it is in all product areas, for example. But architecture has always been really unique in that format. So from that, decided yesterday, I went back in and looked at these guys and said, it'd be kind of nice to go back in here and just have some fun with this. So I switched gears and went back to this sketch right here. This is the one theme I kind of chose to work with here because it's an unusual ribbon type form. And it's also leaning away from a 90 degrees vertical, so it's a bit challenging shape to deal with. So I'm going to use this guy. as a footprint to work with here today. So to get ahead a little bit here, I just took the first page and began to develop a series of what are called site plans or plan views. Very critical because it tells us, for example, what the scale of this thing is. This is looking right down on the object of the building itself. In the plan view, house shadow, Scott's going, hey, how you doing? It's good. So coming back in and putting a little bit of a plan view study in this building we selected. So we're coming here, there's a very ribbon-like shape coming off the form. Notice there's a double piece behind it, and from where we're standing, our station point on this sketch here, this form here is behind the face plane here. So interesting challenge to kind of put that in perspective. So and that was part of that. That was phase number one. I thought, well, what if we kept it just as it is? Second little plan view I did here was maybe got a little more organic with it instead of being very stiff here, but then coming into the radius of the entry area, then really getting a lot more compound or swept as we come out of the shape itself. Have the same basic lean to it, but it does the same overall character. Then this would have the backside line doing the same thing. And again, exceeding the back plane, exceeding the facing plane of the front plane itself. And again, just treating the same entryway, some foliage, softening off some of the shapes in the plan view and looking at the shapes themselves. The third one was going back and looking at this thing in elevation, which is really kind of interesting how it all begins to ribbon through, again, from left to right, and again, from left to right. It's a very organic shape that comes up over the top of that tunnel and back into that form. It begins to lose itself, and a nice, interesting form series here. So I'm going to use this guy as a base to work from, and I thought, well, we just kind of switch gears and maybe do some variations on that theme. So once we go at it here, let's do this. We'll get this all set up. We'll just start doing some rapid little pencil sketches and maybe look at some variations on theme. So bear with me. We'll get started here. Come back and get a little horizon line down here. And come out of that with a break. And this is where I'm going to be guiding this shape through here. And just starting what we did with the other sketch here. Let's get this started and come back in. And we'll just come right down the pike. Get that radius in place. Come back out again and extend that out. And come back in again. Over the top. Put a little bit of a section cut in here. Just kind of rough it in first. Then come right on with a very dramatic, real huge lean in this shape. Really come out and really emphasize that form itself. Then come back and really slice it back. And there it is there, and here. And come in behind it in the same form. And break it right back down, and there it is, coming right back into shape again. There it is. Let's get that form opened up a little bit more. Let's do this. I'm going to go to a pencil, just put a little bit of tone to this thing. And I wasn't sure, for example, about, maybe you could help me out here, guys, those of you who are watching here. I wasn't quite sure. Let me get the ground plane in here first. Then we had a little entryway out here, a little portico shape that came out, changed form. Came out of that over to here. Then we came out of that with a little seating module at the other end. And it came out of that with another form here to kind of take you around the back side of the building. So let's put that ground line down. Then we had a series of these guys too coming in, some little, maybe some water modules of some sort. So we had one there, we had one here, and we had one, maybe let's put one in there. So then we came up off of this, built that wall. Little seating area there for like a little pod. Came back in through here. There's my entryway here. Let's kind of get this down. Came back in again and just tunnel this back just a bit. Let's kind of put a little recess in this thing. Let's do that. Again, just try to massage that same shape. There's my section that comes off of that. Comes up into here. A little bit of a, this is not a section line, it's more of like a design break. Some of the panels, for example, just to kind of break up the surfaces. So there's a really rough into this thing about what we started yesterday, and I wasn't sure in the original notice. Let me go back to this. In the original sketch I did, there are a couple of walls out front. I'm not so sure that's a strong signature to work with. It kind of violated the form itself. But we did do this. We came back in through here, brought this up, and brought this through. So there's just enough ground sneak in here. Let's do the same thing at this end too. There's ground. Really interesting. Now let's pull that back a little steep. That's better. The other thing I kind of looked at. Let's kind of tighten this down now. A little more pencil work. Let's get this guy to come back in, drop this down, and pick up that peak. Notice I'm starting to build the weights up now. The form's starting to come together pretty nicely here. Let's get this into place. This into place. Let's put a little bit of softness in here, kind of get a scale set for us. Kind of go through it, Kind of softens it off a little bit. Come out of that, emphasize that change of pace there. And come back in again. There's my ground base. It comes down, drives back in. There's a secondary little step back in through here as well. So a little more definition and what that thing's going to look like. The other thing I was really debating in putting this together was that cylinder. I don't know if that cylinder is really necessary. The little silo, for example, if we did that, I think it would be kind of nice to take that same silo form and come back in and maybe drop it down, move it over. But not be so bold with it. Come right back in here. Let's get a center line on this thing, and just take it and just kind of drop it back. Not as prominent. Maybe that helps a little bit. Then to bring it back in a relationship with the building itself, let's take a blade off of that thing. Maybe it's more of that. I'm just exploring little facelifts and changes. Let's get that guy up the center line. That feels a little bit better. It has some relationship to the shape itself. What do you think, Chip? Making sense? As opposed to just having a silo sit back there. So I'm going to even drop it down a little bit, open up the scale a little bit, and then really get some nice character based on the shape itself. I'm going to extend this a little bit further too, a little more character. And this, a little change of pace here. Now let's go back in. Let's get that section line down. Now let's start putting a little bit of shadow in this thing now. A little bit of sketch. A little bit of depth. A little bit of tone. Put a little more heat in this. Come back and refining it just a bit. What do you think there, Chip? Yeah, it opens it up nicely. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Thank you. It's nice to come back in there. Let's come back in here and get this thing really rolling here. That little blade comes in. I'm going to eliminate those walls. I don't think those walls are really that necessary. Let's kind of put a little more depth into this thing. Let's kind of kick that off. Let's put a little bit of tone back into this. Go the other way. A little bit of softness in this thing now. Little by little. I just want to finish the sketches with a little bit more definition in some of the pencil work here as opposed to ballpoint pen. We'll refine it a little bit more, if that'll help or not, but we'll see what happens here. Let's get that shadow side in, get that foliage to kind of read a little bit more for us. Some shadow in this, come down to ground plane. And again, let's bring this into play too. Let's get this guy to really knock itself out here. Let's really put a lot of depth in this sketch. There's a portico right there. That's where I come in. Now let's begin to break this up. Soften this off. There'll be a little seating feature of some sort out there in the plaza space. A little bit of rim in this guy. Over to here, into here. Now let's break this up. Looking nice, Doc, but I gotta leave to do all this stuff. Hey, no problem. Good to see you, Chip. Thanks very much. Have a good one. Let's get this glass in place. A bit of a break in there. That kind of gives us a little bit of a vertical status. Kind of neat. There it is. Now we're getting some headway under this thing now. That's cool. Just kind of there it is there. A little bit of a background, kind of a little bit of sky tone, just kind of rough it in there. A little bit of presence behind the machine there. So there's maybe the first pass at this thing. So I don't know. What do you think, guys? Come along all right here. There's the first sketch, kind of changing gears a little bit here with it. Let's go back and do this again. Let's just keep building some sort of a facelift on this thing. Let's go back and maybe look at some sort of an elevation here. Let's pick out where that form is going to be here. And that comes down. Let's give this thing some real presence. Now let's change the character at this end. Let's do this. Let's lower this. Pull this up. Pull that solid off to one side. Now let's go this way with it. A little bit of a graphic break there. Maybe a texture change or maybe tinted glass of some sort. Just looking at variations on this building and theme and just refining it just a little more so we can get out of it here. Variations on theme. There's the facing plane, there's the front face, there's the back face. Just show a little bit of that glass, just sneaking in there. Darker. And some neat little sketches there. There it is. Stop there for a second. There we go. Let's get a little bit of this. There's my center line of pivot. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let me get these guys to line up with that center line right there. It's just going to break in a little bit of glass here. There it is. And there. Now let's get a real shadow in this thing now. There we go. Let's see, center line roughly about right there. Again, split it again. Let's put a shadow in the overhang here. There's a little variation on the theme, just to kind of change the character of that whole upper just a bit more. Let's put a little bit of that into that, and just bring that back. So there's another variation on that frame, and just elevation. Somehow there's a nice presence about this building, how it just kind of, the proportions look really neat, how it just rolls in and comes back out on itself again, and makes a pretty strong statement in terms of just being a very contoured shape. So let's kind of try one there here. Again, the whole thing leans a little bit, so let's kind of go back and do a little thumbnail sketch here. And stretch it just a bit more. Excuse me just a moment. There it is. Really lean this thing back now. Just lower the whole face. Now as it comes out of here, let's try something where we do this. A little more organic. Keep this now low to the ground. And again, really pull this back. And let's get another form coming off of that. There's just running behind that shape. A little change in the other pace here. Down the ground again. Let's keep that honest. Let's pull that back. Almost butterfly-like. There it is. Now let's just drop that other shape in behind it. A lot more dramatic. Let's bring that right up. It's kind of, there you go. That's almost like a parabolic sweep right there. That's neat. Now a real low profile here. Let's put the silo on the other side here. Change its orientation just a bit. Now let's come back in. Put a little surface on this thing. Let's keep the same entryway. Bring it right here. Let's get that shape to work in through here. A little half wall. Out of that, let's go back across the shape here, down the ground. Let's kick that back just a bit. Let's put a little bit of a separation line. Again, same seam line, just to kind of give it some change of pace here. There we are. Let's come back in through here. There's an advanced wing behind the building, kind of pulling in behind it a little bit. Let me just kind of get those back into shape here. Again, just a whole series of real loose thumbnail sketches on what this form is beginning to do here. So let me carry on. Probably get shuffling the stick a bit. Let's get those pods in place here. Changing pace. Let's go back into here again. There's the setback. There's the entryway. Real fast, lucid sketches. I mean, nothing really being pinned down here, folks. It's just, let's get that shape to read a little bit more. Oh, pardon me, so I come back into this. A little tone in the building itself, and then carry it back into that shape. It's off of that ground line just a bit, so it sneaks in there. There you go. Now let's go back in and get this guy. Let's see, there to there. There's my point. There's my center line roughly. There's a little bit of glass line down through here. That to that. To that. Let's open this up just a bit more. This is all real low profile glass surface down below. And same on this side. Center line, split, and split. And again, just really tone it in. Let's put a bit of foliage in this thing, soften it off just a bit. A bit of tone, kind of give it a little softness in this thing. Let's come back around again. Let this shadow to work. Oh, let me come back in there just for a minute. Entryway, a little more detail. We can kind of push more lead in that. Yeah, there we go. And again, another variation on the theme. Very interesting set of circumstances with this building. It's very intriguing. Nope, let me get this pad lined up here. Sorry. There we are. Let me stop there for a moment. Any feedback at all here, gang? I mean, look how I'm really starting to really push this thing into a really interesting envelope. And you know, some of the things you can add, for example, I'll go back in there, add a little bit of blue sky into this. A little bit of ground base in here. A little deeper green. Real loose little sketches, just to kind of get some flavor in this guy. Real loose little studies. A little bit of grass out front. Just kind of soften it off a bit. A little bit of lawn space, rather. And there's a little bit of color added to it, give it a little bit of personality to it. And again, that same variation on theme, just kind of working through that whole shape. It's just very intriguing to me how that form just looks like it's crying out for some really interesting shape development. And in addition to that, just adding maybe just variations on theme. Notice, look where we started. A very, very organic, I mean, very, very geometric shape, and so much more sweeping now, kind of flattened it out a little bit, and then same thing here, flat. I went back and got that same radius, but stretched it just a little bit. So I made some pretty interesting impact, so that helped our case quite a bit. So let's start another series here. Let me just sign this guy, and we'll get moving on here. There we are, there's number one. Go back here again. Let's put that off to one side. There we are. Let's go back through it again here. Let's tighten this thing down just a bit. Let's see what happens when we start to do this. Let's lean it back just a bit more. Pardon me. Maybe this becomes a little reflecting pool. There's our same softening off of the entryway. Put a little bit of foliage out here. And again, let me stop right there. Look how that view changes as a result of him just shifting, again, looking at it more from the right-hand element and then just curling it right back out of the form itself. Let's put that little silo in place here, see what happens with this now. Does it really belong? We'll find out. A little color in this guy. Sharpen the stick here. A little shadow in this wing. Get a little more drama to that offset. Get this piece to come up and really strenuously get that little ribbon piece that we're working with here. And let's just slow this down just a bit now and really kind of put some shadow in the sky. Really kind of get that concept down. There's a pretty dramatic view coming from the other end. I think this really opens up quite a bit and just makes quite a statement, I think. It's just fun to work with here. Just put a little bit of tone into this guy. Let's do this. Put a little bit of terracotta in here. Just a little bit of brick entryway piece here. A little bit of definition. Just to change the texture just a touch. Maybe a little bit down below here. A little bit of brick at the base of this guy. And it's just a little color study here. Maybe underneath here, just a little bit more of that tone, just to kind of take it into a different approach altogether. Remember, this is a little bit of a brick structure too. Just a touch of that, kind of a little bit of color into this thing. And behind us here, let's come back in, get a little bit of sky color. And a little bit of a mix here. It's a real quick line thrust. Let's move a glass atrium in this thing. Changing the lean just a bit more. And there's a little face study. Again, a little bit of a gesture study on how this thing might look like when you start to put a little more content into this thing. And let's do this a bit more reflective pond. Let's kind of tune this in just a bit more. And a little more emphasis in that line. This comes around and just picks up that real organic shape. This is the lower piece, and then that's the backside piece. It just comes in here. And then again, a little more tone in the belly here. That changes form. Comes out along this edge. And right up the sidewall. And there it is right there, gang. There's another variation on theme on that same structure we were looking at just a few moments ago. I mean, really interesting how it seems to really want to change, and I think that's very interesting. Let's go see if we can line these guys up a little bit here. Where we started and where we're coming into play here. Let's see, this comes down just about right there. This can come in just a bit more. We're going to miss that one top. But there's where we started, looking at the first run at it, and then an elevation, and coming a little bit of perspective, just kind of flattening things out a little bit. Let's see if we can make it more dramatic with this thing. Let's try something here. Where we come back in and look at maybe the possibility of, let's do this. This ground. Entryway, it kicks back just a bit, picks up that secondary line here. Brings that ground line right through. And again, ends it like that. Let's see what happens here. Let's not go to glass. Let's get that same sway line in place here. Again, the whole purpose of today's stream is to take advantage of just that one theme we had and just start to put some variations on theme on this thing, and maybe changing some of the tempo, some of the shapes and the lines. For example, I'll go back and review the things when we're all said and done today here. But there's the front side. That's not a section line. That might be just a representative, like a seam line of some sort into the shape itself. Again, maybe this is more conical. Let's try that. Maybe there's a flag off to one side that does the following. Maybe that's got some character to it. A little more character here. Let's do this. Let's break this thing up just a bit more. Let's take this in. It's a real quick pencil sketch. Nothing really definitive, just want to get them really looking through the variation of themes here of what we're dealing with. Let's kind of get that up in place. Let's get that up in place. Let's kind of break that up just a bit more. Entryway, entryway. Again, glass. Not bad. That's an interesting form. It really has some shape to it. We're very undulating. Notice how it all leans back, which I think is very unique unto itself. I think that's one of the things that really intrigued me about putting that sketch together yesterday. Was the whole concept of this very large form. Just all of a sudden, there's a good comparison right there. How that shape just kind of rolls back on itself and really does some interesting things. It just leans about maybe 30 degrees, or pardon me, about 45 or 50 degrees off normal, which makes it very intriguing, very interesting aspect to work with here. So let's carry on. A little bit of sky back behind it, real empathic. A little bit of foreground work here. Let's get this broke down here. Let's kind of break this just a bit more. Let's do this. Let's get this guy to a little glass tower, a little bit of a split line in there. That helps. Tone that back just a touch. Let's get this guy to render it just a little bit of that surface is doing. Let's break that right in and bring it right over the top of the shape. And there you go. Cool. Just a nice, really different approach to just putting the shapes together. Very, very interesting in terms of form studies here. So let's kind of get this down. Let's hold on to that ground line. Let's break this out and do that. Let's carry that through. Break that. Let's put a boulevard in here now. Let's change the character. Put up a boulevard, a little traffic break. Some foliage. Kind of soften it off just a bit. And then just let's get that chase. Let's just chase that asymmetrically. Let's go off the edge of the building here and pick up that side right there. That little silo sits right about there, where that half wall is. So let's kind of put that in place. Reverse it just a bit. There it is. Sitting out there on its end. Let's kind of take this form and then begin to turn it. That's just where the road is. And there's the back side of the form itself. There it is. So that gives us a little bit good indication of where we are here. Let's take this guy and put a little bit of entryway brick structure. It's kind of all pavers. It's going to roll that in very lightly. A little bit of green grass in here. Let's see what that does. Let's go a little bit of color. This guy. Let's kind of nail this down. A bit of that. Put more depth in this. Again, a little bit of foliage, soften it off. The entryway piece there. Just to kind of take the curse off of all the edges that we've got out there. Just a little bit more of a little bit more character to it. Just to kind of break through it here. There we are. A bit of tone. Let it go at that. And behind it with a little bit more grass behind the surface here. Let's do this. Soften it off just a bit more. Let's go back in. I'll get to sharpen the stick a little bit here. Give it a sense of scale. Some figure work going into it, give me a sense of idea how large this facility really is. Let's come back in again, put a little bit of this tone to it. Again, glass. A little bit of a split line. A bit of shadow in this thing. Again, a little bit of shadow inside that entry area. Glass again. Down to ground. A lot of weight change in the lines here. Let's get this shadow in this form here. This backside wing. Let's drop a real hard shadow. If I remember, rotate this pad a bit here, gang. Real hard shadow inside that glass area. Oh, there we are. Shadow. More depth in that entryway. And a little bit of tone up on top, just to change the tempo of that shape. There it is. Comes over the top of that guy. And again, a little more tone inside the cylinder, away from the light source. There's a bit more depth in there, and just a touch more shadow. And there it is. It's another form and variation on theme. I mean, look how interesting that shape really begins to work its way through. And again, it's a lot of work to be done, but as far as the actual impact of the shape itself, how it all leans over, it just kind of leans into the environment. Really kind of an interesting approach to it here. Let me just kind of sign this guy here. So that's pretty interesting stuff there, guys. There's phase two. Let's go back to just a little traditional piece here and kind of wrap it up with my final little study here. So it's been helpful to you, a lot of fun. And it's just kind of sharpen some sticks here and we'll get ready to go. Put these aside for a moment. We'll just sharpen these up. And again, the whole purpose of this stream today is to take yesterday's exercises that were all generated in ballpoint pen, for example, just real quick, that whole family of 3 sketches like this, for example, that were all generated, pardon me, very rapidly, and just to get some theme and some surface down, and just talking through the fact that this whole idea of rapid sketch is so critical. When a rapid sketch comes together, you really want to make sure that you just have a lot of impact and a lot of theme together with it, and a lot of not a lot of hesitation. Just going in there and making a statement with it, letting it blush, finish the material off, and go from there. So the whole stream yesterday was spent on first phase of generating an idea, just getting ballpoint sketches down. Today I just took one of these themes, which is this one right here, and began to work through it in terms of maybe going through a second phase of refinement studies. And you begin to look like this. I started by introducing it in terms of what it might look like on the plan view, which is here, another plan view, which is there, and then maybe an elevation. So just a little bit more of a variation and change here to kind of look at what this possibilities might be of this form itself. And so that was the first, we started the stream today with a variation on those plan views and elevations. Then sketch 1, for example, came in and just stayed right with it and opened it up again. A little bit more pencil work, a little more color, a little bit more detail, a little bit more shading tone to it. And went from that to phase 2 with back to an elevation. Do we want this big Parthenon, this very elegant ovoid entryway area? That could be interesting, still keeping the same glass lean. Then again, lower profile here, just get a little lower with it, changing the character of the cylinder behind it, the office structure, and really flaring out. Notice this is getting a lot more, this is very rigid, and this has got a lot more organic, just to change the pace just a little bit. And again, the purpose of today's stream was to take phase 1 and begin to refine things down and make some adjustments or some tune-ins or what I refer to as facelifts or improvements or embellishments to the original sketches. So that was the first one we did. And we just wrapped up this page here, which was the second phase of getting a lot more in it, just changing the view a little bit, just turning it around and seeing what this form might look like. Going from the right-hand side back to the original entryway and just turning it around, maybe going from right to left, seeing what happens with the shapes themselves. So let's go back and we're going to put it all together here with maybe one more shot at it here. And this, maybe with another variation. Let's kind of flatten it out just a bit. Flatten it out, meaning drop the eye level just a touch more to take advantage of this and let's drop it in. There's an element here, there's an element there. Those are my two key points I'm going to build off of right there. I'm going to come back on through here with a lot of lean. And again, now I'm going to start to really pull this back. I'm going to stretch this just a bit more. So it's going to do this and lean this back. And come right back and do this over the top. Again, out of that with a lot more sway line in it, and then really change the character. Let's just kind of get this up. And there it is. Form behind it. Bring that back into play. But notice again, there's an opportunity here, even in that raw sketch right there, there's an opportunity to make some really interesting facelift changes to this. Do we want to keep this thing no profile, run it parallel now and do this? And now does the atrium actually start up on top and do that? And does it waterfall down? Let's pan that in. Now does that come down and break into this? We'll see here. That. Now behind this, is there another plane that comes in here and just roars behind it, sneaks in and does the following? Does it float behind this and tie into this? Which comes in behind that. That could be interesting. Let's cut this back. What happens if this, let's do this. What happens if that does this and that comes out and does the following? Ooh, that's interesting. So you've got an overlap there where one plane actually wraps over and the other one just stays where it was, statically speaking. So there it is, down to ground. Now let's get that ground plane in there again. Back to that. Again, let's open this up. This might drop just a little further. Come up to that. Again, that does that. And this will do that. glass. Maybe this kicks back just a bit more too. Maybe that doesn't touch ground. That just does that. There's an interesting form. Look at that, how that butterfly has just changed dramatically. For example, now we're going to take the atrium up the other way. Let's kind of pull this out just a bit more, so there's a little more lean to it. So this may have a little bit of a change here. That does that. Now let's do this. Let's put that cylinder right back in through. Let's kind of sneak it in real low profile and turn it. Let's go vertical with that dart. Look at the variation on theme there. Let's go back in and just get this down. This is still going to be my entranceway. But now, this is now going to be the atrium up on top. And just change the character of the glass. Let's see what that does. Drive this through. Drive that through. Let's open up the footprint now. Change the format just a bit. Real soft sketch, just trying to get a character down. Same seating area. Let's open it up just a bit more. Little softscape, little trees in here. Take our time, just get a little bit of texture in here, kind of soften it up a little bit. An interesting format here in terms of the building itself is taking down a really interesting evolution here throughout the course of the day. Not saying it's a great design, that's not the purpose of the stream. The purpose of the stream is to come back in and show us how to take a very quick concept sketch in ballpoint pen, for example, and begin to massage it and make some revision changes to it that really has some character to it, hopefully. So let's go back in here. Let me probably sharpen this here just for a moment. Let's get this atrium piece to work. Let's roll that down. Let's roll that down. Now let's take that right in. A little more depth into this guy. There's my entrance right there. Let's put a shadow in this guy. Glass. Let's take that shape right through. Let's put a little tone in this thing now, or a little reflective quality. Into the support mullions. And then the cross member. Let's put a little bit of a texture change in this thing. And a little bit of grass surface. Kind of work through here. Let's kind of soften this off a little bit now. Real fast Prismacolor pencil sketches just to get some character down. There's the one behind the building here with that. Let's put more depth in this tree surface here, some foliage. Gonna give it some depth now, just building as we go, starting in light and keeping it light until it's right. And all of a sudden, putting a presence together in this thing. All of a sudden, taking this whole step-by-step process. Now let's put this in shadow. This is a negative surface. Let's do this now. Let's emphasize that wing by doing this. Comes in behind, picks up that portion right there. Comes back out again. Goes in behind the building. Picks up a little bit of this, so we'll tone that back just a bit. So we kind of sneak it through there. And again, that shape comes through and ends up coming out on the inside here. And since we've got a light source coming in, go a little deeper here with this in the shadow. Kind of offset this guy. And go from dark to light. Bring that blade into play. The shadow drop in through here. Look how the line weights are really starting to dictate what the shape is starting to do. So let's come back in there and get some glass. Run it right through the transparency of the trees here. There's some glass surface there. Let's get this all set up. Reflected light. Let's put a little bit more of that brick tone in here. Change the character just a touch, and reflect that right back into it. A little detail things that make a huge difference, and just getting the sketch to kind of read for us here. Let's put this wing in place, shadow it over, drop that in. And it just picks up that same sway line right here. Comes in around the corner, in around the corner, and just separates this guy just enough off of ground. Sidewalk, lawn space. Again, out of that half round where the trees are, into this, into that seating space. And again, let's go back and put a little more of this in here. Let's change gears, I'm sorry. Put some scrub foliage around this seating area here. And get this in, then we'll kind of put a little bit of texture to it. So on. All of a sudden, look at that form. It's just starting to come on. Hopefully take some life here to it. It's a very interesting set of circumstances. Just bring it all up together. Let's kind of do this. I'm going to get this guy to drop out. There's a little bit of interruption here. Let's do this. Let's get that to work here. That's that same form coming over the top. Into its shadow. And a little bit of a reflective portion here into that shape. There it is, coming across. Let's get this bowl to work now, this little undulation into that shape there, and then around, and out of it again. And some real severe shadow underneath that second wall here. That'll drop out. As will this. That'll go into extreme shadow. Oh, right there. And last but not least, another glass on this side here. A little bit reflective. Now we're going to break this up. There's the underside of that glass surface. Here's my split. Unreal. There she is. It's coming together pretty nicely. Look at the little addition of that reverse wing. Change the entire character of this form. So let's go back and kind of wrap it up as we go here. Let's hit this half wall in place. More texture in some of this ground foliage here, so it's not so pure. Just a little more detail into it. Just kind of scribble through it, kind of give it some character. And let's just try a little experiment. Let's just kind of do this. Let's put a break line in through here. Let's do this and this. Let's, oops, that's not as steep. Let's do that. Let's do this and that. I'm gonna come in and put a little bit more of this into it. And I think that might just put a little bit of sky back in this thing. How's this? And there you go. That should kind of wrap things up for us here in terms of putting together a little series of interesting, very interesting architectural, so not these sketches aren't great, but I mean, they're just intended to be, again, a second variation of the little thumbnail sketches based on what we're after in terms of how we started with the stream yesterday, about looking at the possibilities of what happens when you get into a situation where you get a good, quick, fast thumbnail sketch in. Very, very, very fast study. You gotta come back to this original. This is one of 6 we did yesterday. That's where we started. And throughout the course of the day, I just thought, well, maybe the second stream, as I said yesterday, the real battle plan was to start with some conceptual, real rapid sketches, then take a look at one of these things and do a series of phase 2, which is today. Take one of these themes and just go a little closer with maybe some color, a little bit of color, a little variation on theme, and begin to develop the surfaces a little bit further. So I think that's what we're after here with this guy. And let me just sign this guy here, folks, and we'll finish it up here for the day. So again, a lot of fun in terms of just looking at variations on theme, how things work. And again, it's all driven by perspective. Every one of these sketches we did today, as far as refinement goes or facelifting, was all predicated on setting up the perspective. Again, my leading edges are right about in here. I just faded everything back in perspective, faded it all back in perspective. It's all there. And I want to go back and just do a real quick review here, folks. Let's line them all up in terms of sequence. So we started here, 1, went to 2, 1, this is the first one we did, second, and again the last one. Let's kind of put them all together here. this is where we are. So we started the stream today with going from the generation of yesterday's setup. Again, sorry to be redundant, but I want to make sure we get a real good message across here. And the message is this: it's really important to not get committed to some of those first thumbnail sketches. I mean, explore a lot of different things, move things around a little bit. Don't be afraid to take some challenges and change the tempo. This happened to be yesterday's one of 3 sketches we did yesterday. They're very rapid sketches to get the process down. And as I said yesterday, we're going to go through a series of them. We're going to pick one today and just go through some variations on themes. So the first thing I did was, based on that sketch selection, went back in and said, hey, how about if we did this? What if we did a plan view, what that might look like? Here's one variation, looking right down on it. Here's another variation, looking right down on it. Notice a little more organic, and we make some changes to it. Then I went right back to an elevation again and say, what does it look like in terms of butterfly? What does it look like when you look right at it from the north elevation, looking into it? So it has that kind of stance to it. What we don't see is the lean in the surface. These surfaces are leaning tremendously. It's not all just one plane. This plane leans right back on itself. So as it does that, that's where we started with that. And the first sketch we did was just looking at that very simple form, tunneling in and opening it up a little bit, almost like the first sketch we did yesterday, to open it up. But that didn't change much. In the initial thumbnail sketch in the ballpoint pen, notice we kind of dropped the size of the silo, opened up a little bit more, just kind of make it just a bit more comfortable. Hey, how you doing there? How you doing there, Chip? You're back. Super. Hey, back from the adulting stuff. Yeah, thanks very much, Chip. I'm going to go back. I don't know if you saw the first pass we did here. I'm just going through a real quick review. We, again, made the selection, went to plan view, a variation a little more organic in the plan view, and then back to elevation. And I thought that building was interesting. It's more of a ribbon and a very difficult surface to deal with because you've got these undulation shapes and very low to the ground. And again, a lot of lean in it, so it was fun. A good selection to go into a second phase refinement. And before I forget too, tomorrow we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take this same building and tighten it all down, pick a design, and do a really nice finished rendering and call it a 3-part series. So there's the first thing we did today. Plan view studies based on this selection, and these little thumbnail sketches, keeping it as it is, and then looking right at an elevation. Do we want to change the atrium a little bit? Do we want to change the entryway? I wouldn't want to be the contractor having to build that. Yeah, you and me both. That might be a little tough, but Frank Gehry can do it, so can we, Chip, no problem whatsoever. So that was the first series, and we just changed the form a little bit lower, squatted it, and just really got much more organic with this in this little thumbnail sketch here. Again, whole idea is to get the variations down. So that was our first really serious sketch we did. We went to this generation, second plate, where we really started to really turn this thing around. I mean, look at the change in drama here when you begin to change the view. Amazing fun, just fun to work with because it was a very challenging shape to deal with. It all just leans back on itself and very highly cantilevered. You notice there's a lot of cantilever back here, so we might have to pull this ground plane out a little bit more to support it, which I can understand fully. So we would up to this format, turn it around again and say, what if we come from the butterfly end and really strengthen that shape? Look at that sway line. Just comes through the shape and can hold. Oh, dang, gravity defying. Yeah, it is gravity defying. It really is. You'd have to structure inside that form, and then behind that, we'd have to gusset that somewhere in there, Chip, obviously. But again, the purpose of this whole series is not to get into the technical side of building the construction side, but just the real adventure of exploring shape and surfaces from an architectural point of view. Taking a theme, phase 1, ballpoint pen, phase 2, refining it a little bit and going through some variations on theme. And then the last one we did was this, just picking a selection and coming back in and saying, man, this is just interesting how, again, changing the format of the silo, the office, and again, putting a reverse wing on this. Maybe this side, tomorrow we kind of come back and do a bat wing on this and kind of reverse this shape as well. But these are the things I want to take a look at. And again, I want to thank you all, Chip especially, for hanging in. Hope everything went well for you. And just variations of little thumbnail sketches on architecture. So any thoughts in wrapping it up here, Chip? What do you think? Nice entryway, atrium. Yeah, I think that was a nice way to do it. To bring the glass over the top instead of captivating underneath that blister. Both would have worked, but I think that's a lot more. What I really like the most about that, I don't want to sound like I'm being a favoritist here, but the sketches we did yesterday, the one theme I liked about that original theme we did in ballpoint pen was the fact that this whole thing, this whole surface, let's do this side by side here so we can get these guys to work. This whole thing really hugged the ground. There's not a lot of lift in it. It was really sneaky in terms of where the glass line was. That I thought was a strong suit. Notice how we got much more adventuresome with some of the sweeps on the end here. But I kept and maintained that whole theme all the way through that very low glass line. It gave it a really nice character, I think. So that's what we ended up with. I'm not saying we're going to live there, but we'll pick up tomorrow's stream by maybe picking a theme, and maybe this view will look good, and we'll just do a nice finish rendering with a little more slow down on it. Now, these are really theme sketches. They're not finished yet. We'll have a little bit of character to it, very similar to tomorrow's stuff. We're going a little further with it. So anyhow, and again, anything else, Chip, you noticed? Good, bad, and differently? Well, it's great to have you back. Hopefully it all worked out all right. Pretty cool. Very interesting. A lot of fun here today. This is a great subject matter, and the purpose of this whole series we're going to start now is to really get into the rhythm of how to really put together a thumbnail sketch, a concept piece, refine that piece, and then go into a finished start. So it's not all done in one fell swoop. There's a lot of thought behind it here, and that's what I want to telegraph today. So all that to say, if you know anybody's interested in joining my stream, please pass along the word that I'm live broadcasting here on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays. I'd love to build my audience, and Chip, if you know anybody interested, pass on the word. I'd appreciate it. And if I've done something right here today, please drop me a note at my email address at jim@drcontrast.com. I'd love to hear from you, especially about subject matter, what you'd like to see me do. Is this okay? Is this process working for you? Do we want to do more of certain things? I'm more than open to work with you all to get some really good content on the stream to make a difference for your careers. And not being heroic about that. That's the purpose of the stream, to really work with people who want to get better at what they do. I do. Every time I sit down to draw, it's just really processing the fact that, why don't I get better, get sharper with it, and more lucid with it, and far more adventuresome with it. That's the journey as far as I'm concerned. And again, if I've said something right here today, please tell me. If I have not done things right, please tell me as well. I want to know what you think. Very important. And then last but not least, in closing things down here today, this is the real purpose of the whole stream, and I mean this with the bottom of my heart. Appreciate all of you, respect all of you, Chip especially, for tuning, coming back in, and enjoying the broadcast here. Really enjoy it. And last but not least, never forget to remember to dare to be great, because you are. That's our whole battle cry. Have a great one, gang. We'll see you tomorrow, 2:30. Take care. Have a good one. All the best.